Hi, everybody. Welcome to my first conversation about what are the three principles. And before I start, I want to tell you a little bit about why this is meaningful to me, why I even care. So, I've actually had three experiences in my life that have been incredibly life-changing, really significantly life-altering. And all three of them involved experiences around coaching and being coached and learning about coaching. And the first two were really impactful because they gave me an opportunity to look at myself in a new way. So all of a sudden, I went from sort of being without observing to being able to observe myself. And it was significant, and it was truly life changing. The third one was different and really the most impactful because I went from being able to observe myself in a new way to really being able to observe the whole world in a new way and everyone in a new way. And to start to be able to see not just how I was acting in the world, but the fact that how I was acting in the world was completely consistent with how everyone is acting in the world and always has acted in the world. And so it's kind of the difference between learning how to do something and learning how it works. I remember one of my first bicycles. I wanted to see if I could get it to work better, and I took the whole thing apart, and I really learned how it worked. And from then on, it's just changed my relationship with bike riding to some extent. And this is the same. This has been the same with life. So learning how life works and literally how the mind works and how all of our minds work has completely changed my experience in this world. So I'm sharing it with you. I'm hoping that this will be the beginning of a journey for you. One thing I've found about this journey is that on the surface it seems kind of simple when you first learn it, and the deeper into it you go and the more you explore, the more you see. And the more you see, the more rich it becomes. And the more rich it becomes, the more incredible it becomes. So that's my hope for each and every one of you. So this all starts with a gentleman named Sydney Banks. And Sid was a welder. He was a Scottish welder who lived in Canada. And sometime in the late 60s or early 70s, I'm really not sure of the exact timing, Sid had an enlightenment experience. So he and his wife went to a retreat, and it was a couples retreat, and they were very trendy at the time from the way the story is told. And he went to this retreat, and it was one of these places where you would go and you would learn how to yell at each other, so that the idea was if you got everything off your chest, that you would improve your relationship. And he went to this retreat and he hated it. And he and his wife ended up making friends with a psychologist, a gentleman psychologist, and his wife. And they went out for coffee. And the two of them, Sid and the psychologist, got into an argument about which one of them was the most insecure. And the psychologist said to Sid, you aren't insecure, you just think you're insecure. And what this did for Sid was it hit him between the eyes. And he looked at the guy and he said, do you realize what you just said? And the guy was, yeah. I said, you're not insecure, you just think you're insecure. And what happened to Sid was the whole world of thought opened up, and he began to see thought and to see the role that thought played in his world and how he and all of us are creating our reality every moment, every day. based on what we're thinking in the moment. So over the next few days, the story continues that Sid, he didn't sleep for 3 days as he was pondering all of this. And during that process, he had an even deeper enlightening experience where he started to recognize the incredible wisdom that existed in the world, and kind of the where does thought come from, and a universal intelligence that exists in all of us. And Sid started to be able to articulate that there are 3 principles, and they're principles, just like gravity is a principle. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about gravity, but it explains how things work in the world. And the fact that the earth is round is a principle. And again, we don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. However, our world is different than it was during the age of time when they thought that the world was flat. So he started to articulate these 3 principles, and that's what I'm going to share with you right now. So the first principle, as I mentioned, it's actually the 3rd principle, but since Sid recognized it first, I'm going to explain it to you first, and that again is the principle of thought. And really, this is simply the acknowledgement that we live in a world of thought. And if you think about how much you carry around in your brain all day long, and how much those thoughts create your experience, you can start to realize that even though we have a tendency, especially in our society, to go out looking for experiences in the world and thinking that our experiences create our thinking, that in fact the absolute reverse is true. That it is our thinking that creates our experience in this world, both in the short term and in the long term. So, for example, this is a very simple example, but it's a good place to start. If I look outside the window and it's raining, I could have any number of thoughts. I could be thinking, oh man, I wish it wasn't raining. It's horrible outside. And I could be feeling very sad and disheartened by the weather. Or I could look out the window and think, it's beautiful. Look at the rain. Look how beautiful it is. So in the very, very simplest way, you can see how thought creates our experience. And I promise you, as you continue to look in this direction, you may be thinking about exceptions that you have in your mind right now. I promise you, as you continue to look and get deeper and deeper, you'll see how profound this recognition is that thought creates our experience. And just to add a little more on that, and just something else for you to ponder, we build our lives and we think if we have the right house and the right spouse and the right education and the right job, that we will somehow find happiness. And the truth of the matter is, our happiness or our emotion of any kind never comes from any of those things. It all comes from inside of us. And we find purity and happiness and contentment from a place inside. So let's talk about that place inside a little bit. The another principle that Sid articulated, he called it mind. And what he was pointing to was the unbelievable universal intelligence that exists all around us every day, all the time, and how it impacts us. So think about the world. Think about the trees outside your window and the fact that every spring they get leaves and some of them flower, and in the fall those leaves change colors and then they fall off, and that there's an intelligence behind that some universal wisdom created that. And a couple years ago I had bird's nest in my yard, and the birds, they know what to do. They know how to build the nest. They know how to have babies. They know how to raise the babies. and they know when it's time for the babies to leave the nest. And that universal intelligence really exists for all of us all the time. And the crazy thing is that we tend to overlook it. We take it for granted. And yet, if you stop to think and you stop to observe, you'll see that in every minute you know exactly what to do. And you get up and do it. And sometimes that means loading the dishwasher, and sometimes it means doing the laundry. And sometimes it means writing a book. And sometimes it means making a phone call, and sometimes it means building a business. And in every moment, there's a universal intelligence that is available to you to give you guidance, to give you direction, and help you make decisions. It's part of your common sense. It's part of your creativity. Every time you get a new idea, every time you're working on making a decision and you don't know what to do, and then the decision comes to you, all of that is universal mind at work. And it's all around us all the time. It's in every single one of us, and not just individually, but it's in every single one of us collectively, and it binds us together. And the third principle that Sid talked about was consciousness. Consciousness is our ability to see these things. Consciousness is our ability to notice that there's a universal intelligence. Consciousness is our ability to see our thoughts and to see how our thoughts create our experience. And it becomes this lens through which we experience everything. So that if we didn't have consciousness, we couldn't actually have the experience. And one of the ways that consciousness manifests itself that I love the most is that when we have thinking, it creates feelings in us. And those feelings and those emotions, they manifest themselves as a physical feeling in our body. And that physical feeling in our body can be one of the best ways, actually the only way, to recognize where our thinking is in the moment. And when we feel sad and we feel sadness in our bodies, we know that we're at a lower level of consciousness. And when we feel peace and calm, that's when we tend to be at a higher level of consciousness. And our minds are open, and the opportunity for new thoughts come in those higher levels of consciousness. So we can learn to recognize levels of consciousness. We can learn to let ourselves settle down when we're revved up, and we can recognize when we're in a low mood or a high mood, and that sometimes it's better to engage with our coworkers and friends and family than other times, because a low mood or a frustrated mood or a lower level of consciousness may not be the times of our greatest clarity. So there's my early summary for all of you, and I hope you found this interesting, and I would love to talk to you more about it. If you're coming to my Thursday evenings in my garden discussions, we'll be exploring this on all different levels, and you'll have an opportunity to bring up your own personal experiences and explore how observing mind, consciousness, and thought can give you greater clarity and oftentimes greater peace. And if you're just interested in exploring this further for yourself, you can contact me and we can have a coaching conversation. And you can also check out my resources page. I'll be continually growing that with resources that you can take a look at for your own personal growth around the principles and the way the mind works, and how it can bring greater peace and creativity and innovation and calmness and better relationships and really all kinds of cool stuff to your world. So I look forward to hearing from you. If you, I hope you'll sign up to be on my email list on my website, and feel free to contact me with questions. And that's it for now. Take care and be well. Thanks.